Welcome, everyone. Hopefully, all of you had a good lunch. I'm super excited for our next speaker, Professor Jaehong Kim. We have a very long time history. Professor Jaehong Kim was a professor at Georgia Tech when I was doing my PhD, and he was my committee member as well. But beyond that, he has done some amazing things, and it's my honor to introduce him. So Professor Jaehong Kim is a Henry Becton Senior Professor of Chemical and Environmental Engineering at Yale University, where he also served as a department chair from 2006 to 2012. And prior to joining Yale, he was a professor at Georgia Tech, as I mentioned, Georgia Power Distinguished Professor. He received his BS and MS in Chemical Engineering from Seoul National University and a PhD in Environmental Engineering from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. His research focuses on environmental application of nanomaterials and single-atom catalyst and catalytic, electrocatalytic advanced oxidation processes. In today's talk, he's going to talk about how to transition this research from the lab scale to the industrial scale to the practical applications. And I want to just say that he has won numerous awards, so I don't want to repeat all those awards, but if you look around, he has a number of distinguished awards, including the Huber Prize, which is a very prestigious prize. He is also recently appointed as the head of the Berkeley College at Yale. And without further ado, Jaehong, please.
Well, thank you so much, Lokesh, for a nice introduction. It's a great honor and pleasure to share my research. In fact, would very much like to continue the conversation that I had at the lunch about the World Cup, but I guess we can do that during the panel discussion. I would welcome any question from anyone from Mexico. Right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about catalytic water treatment. You might have heard that a lot of researchers and industry practitioners are talking about a paradigm shift from centralized water treatment systems, which is a sort of Victorian approach, to more distributed approach, where you have distributed water reclamation systems and water treatment plant near the resource user clusters. And in this type of approach, we need many modular water treatment technologies, ranging from that you are very familiar with: membranes, adsorption, UV processes, and advanced oxidation. And unlike the physical separation processes such as membrane adsorption, which end up producing concentrated waste stream that needs to be further treated, advanced oxidation is somewhat unique in that it is relying on producing reactive oxygen species, the radicals, to destroy these pollutants to the benign end product. And therefore, it is well suited to enable fit-for-purpose treatment of pollutants, especially when you need a higher quality water, for example, for human consumption. There are many different types of advanced oxidation processes, and we are talking about more modular approaches, smaller scale that can be well distributed. One of the research that we've been doing related to Long Island under Yale Superfund Research Center is to develop this electrochemical cell to destroy the pollutants such as 1,4-dioxane, which is somewhat prevalent across many areas. And the uniqueness of this cell is about multi-stack system and pulsing strategy to make sure the system lasts really, really long. Because some of the research that we do in the laboratory, we do not necessarily focus too much on how long it lasts. Okay? But then, as we are thinking about translation to real-world application, what becomes more important is how long it lasts at what cost. So I'm going to talk a lot more about this. This is one example. This is called electrochemical advanced oxidation, basically using anodic oxidation as a way to destroy pollutant. But more traditional advanced oxidation uses precursor chemicals such as hydrogen peroxide. You might have heard about Becton chemistry. So you have a hydrogen peroxide, you have an iron, and then they combine, produce reactive oxygen species. Well, if you are talking about distributed system in a really small scale, let's imagine your home or small unit. It is going to be too difficult to continuously supply hydrogen peroxide or other precursor chemical. So people like us are thinking about having a system that can produce hydrogen peroxide on site by just plugging into the electricity wall. So this is the modular hydrogen peroxide synthesis cell that produces just about right amount of hydrogen peroxide by oxygen reduction from atmospheric oxygen and produces hydrogen peroxide on the cathode. Okay? And this particular research was demonstrated for a wide range of source waters, especially groundwater, because ionic strength is slightly higher, so it works pretty well. So once you have a hydrogen peroxide, then you use a catalyst, and that's where the catalytic water treatment comes in. I just saw one presentation poster out there using this TR407 electrode for the activation of iron. So one of the most common approach is to use hydrogen peroxide or other precursor chemical, and you use catalyst. That great thing is the catalyst surface, and this catalyst convert hydrogen peroxide into the reactive oxygen species, such as hydroxyl radical, and that's by definition heterogeneous advanced oxidation. Again, we are starting with hydrogen peroxide, and we use catalyst. Okay, so that sounds cool. The main problem is that radical, as name implies, is extremely reactive. It just gets disappeared pretty fast. If you look at its concentration profile from the surface, most radicals are consumed within tens of nanometers, okay? And because of a lot of scavengers that are present in water, and therefore, the overall efficiency significantly depends on the interaction of target pollutants with catalytic surface. So what do we do about it? So one way is to design a material or system such that pollutant in the water comes close to the surface of the catalyst, okay? And we call it hook and destroy approach. Then there are tons of papers that are there, and we've been working on that for many years ago about that approach. There's a pros and cons. Well, one thing that I'm going to discuss more today is another thought process. So how about putting another catalyst, okay? There's a concentration profile, but then we are going to bring these surfaces close to each other. If they are close to each other, the concentration of radical will be at a certain level, and if we send the water through that space, pollutants will get destroyed. So, okay, we have a catalyst surface, is pretty narrow, water passes through, water passing through a narrow channel. What does it mean? It's a membrane, right? So, okay, membrane used to be, we think it more as a passive barrier, meaning membrane doesn't do anything other than rejecting stuff. But then can we make the membrane in this fashion such that when things pass through, they destroy pollutants that are small enough to pass through the pore, okay? That's the thought process here. So we had that idea many years ago, and this is our first publication in 6 years ago. So we started with a very well-defined membrane, AAO membrane. This is not even practical. It's very expensive and brittle, but it has an extremely well-defined pore structure. So we started to load catalyst inside the pore, okay, and see what happens. The catalyst that we chose was iron oxide, okay, which is sort of benchmark catalyst for this purpose in advanced oxidation. So I'm not going to go through a whole lot of details, but then if you look at the left-hand side, it's a suspension reactor. What that means is that you have a beaker, you put catalyst, you mix it. That's a traditional way of you do the experiment. On the right-hand side is this membrane where you have catalyst inside the pore, water passes through, and the reaction happens inside the pore, okay? Both works. So you can see in the y-axis that pollutants get degraded. But what you need to take a look is the time scale. Left-hand side is minute, and right-hand side is the seconds. So conclusion here is that reducing the pore size down to about 20 nanometer, you're talking about enhancing the kinetics by over 800 times. That sounds pretty cool, right? We want to destroy something fast. I think I'm going to skip this slide, but we have done quite a lot of simulations and work to understand the mechanism. Basically, the same concept as I explained. Because of confinement, reactions are happening inside a highly reactive region so that we can destroy stuff really, really fast. Iron oxide is not the best catalyst out there. It's a benchmark that everybody studied because it's cheap, it's easy to make. But as people like me in academia, we always want to publish the catalyst that is fancy and that shows the fastest kinetics, okay? So one of the material that we published even earlier in 2018 was of this funky material called iron oxychloride, okay? This was the highest performing catalyst in the literature at the time in producing hydroxyl radical from hydrogen peroxide and destroying pollutant. This was like killer catalyst. Okay, it works over wide range of pH, which is cool. Okay, the mechanism we can discuss during the panel discussion after we discuss about the World Cup. But anyhow, so now we have this new idea about putting catalyst inside the pore, and we happen to have this killer catalyst, so we decide to make a new membrane. So one on this orange color is because after we load iron oxychloride into the commercial ceramic membrane. You may imagine that maybe if I load all the catalyst inside this commercial membrane, the pore may get clogged. But if you do it well, okay, well enough, you don't really clog the pore that much. Molecular weight cutoff goes down from 400 kilodalton to 300 kilodalton in this case. All right, so with that membrane, so we have done quite a lot of experiment. This is an interesting data. Y-axis is parachlorobenzoic acid remover, how much you are destroying, okay? Higher means great, lower means not good. Axis is a flux. Flux means how much water is passing through the membrane. Higher flux means that water is passing through the membrane really fast, so it is spending short amount of time inside the membrane. If flux is low, water is flowing slow, that means water is spending more time inside the membrane. So what we are trying to do is not only using membrane to remove stuff by size exclusion, just like any other membrane. Once this little stuff that passes through the membrane, small organic pollutants, they get destroyed, and we want to give sufficient time. So we don't want to make the water pass through too fast, so we need to find a certain optimum. In this particular case, we are achieving about 100 liters per meter square per hour, which is reasonably fast, which is not great compared to other microfilters or ultrafilters, but this is reasonably good flux to be able to upscale. And they are spending about 10 seconds. This membrane is relatively thick. So when we are reporting this, yeah, it seems like this is going to be a great technology we can advance toward more realistic application. We have tested wide range of pollutants. It's going to work well because it's an advanced oxidation. One good thing about advanced oxidation is that it is using hydroxyl radical, which is so strong, it is non-selective, meaning it just destroys everything, which is great. All right, so we got inspired, and then we got some water from nearby water treatment plant, and we do this sort of recycling experiment. If you read any papers, this is pretty common approach. You have one experiment, and then after that, performance decreases a little bit, so you are going to wash it and do it again and see how it goes over time. And we notice some changes over time. It's just getting worse. What do we do? If it loses its property within one day, will any industry practitioners adopt this? Probably not, right? But we gotta publish the paper, so we came up with this idea that, okay, if we soak that in a hydrochloric acid and then in high temperature sintering, it's going to back up the performance. Okay, fine, but who in the world is going to do this in the plant, right? So, okay, we still were able to publish the paper, but we had to start to scratch our head. Hey, what do we do? So we were thinking that we probably need to have a stronger catalyst. Instead of chlorine attaching to the crystal structure, we decided to have an iron oxyfluoride. Fluoride is a little more electronegative. It's going to have a strong binding property. Yeah, so, and luckily, iron oxyfluoride is even a better catalyst than iron oxychloride. Bingo. But then, just like iron oxychloride, it loses a property over time. I'm sorry, I advanced too much. It loses a property over time, which is sad. Okay, as you use, it loses fluoride. So, do we want to regenerate using hydrofluorous acid, HF? No way, right? You don't want to do that. So we were just like, okay, how about just fluoride ion, sodium fluoride, and it recovered. Okay, so you just need a fluoride ion. So you have a catalyst, you are losing fluoride ion, it loses a property, and I don't want this fluoride. Hey, don't go, please come back to the catalyst. How do we do that? So we are now, this is new design. So you have a layered structure. We are going to confine the catalyst between the sandwich. It's just like the sandwich you just had. So turkey is the catalyst. You had bread, and bread is the main structure, okay? Water is your sauce, okay? Water is flowing like that, okay? Whenever it releases this fluoride, it's going to get stuck there. Stuck by bread, is going to go back and stick to the catalyst. Make sense? Okay, that's what we are doing. Okay, and now it works for about 2 weeks, not 1 day, which is good, right? I'm going to deviate my discussion a little bit here. These are all nano catalysts. So now we are talking about membrane with a big pore sizes. Hey, we know that we use really small pore-sized membranes like reverse osmosis, nanofiltration, or even tight UF membrane. Pore sizes are less than 1 nanometer. And it seems like all the catalysts that we are working on are nano catalysts. If you have a nano-sized catalyst and if you have a pore less than 1 nanometer, what happens? Your pore gets clogged. It's no longer a membrane. So if I want to have a membrane that has a really, really small, but if I want to have this catalytic property, how small the catalyst should be? Less than nanometer. What is the theoretical limit of the smallest catalyst? That's another subject that I've been studying for about past 10 years, single atom catalyst. So palladium, as an example, if you have 100 grams of palladium, in nanometer scale, you are going to be able to cover about 250 meters square of the surface, and that has been the essence of nanotechnology. You have this interesting, expensive material. If you make it nanoscale, you are going to drastically increase its surface area, and at the same time, it has a unique properties when it is very, very small. But what if you go down to one single atom, okay? So palladium, atom by atom onto a substrate. If you have 100 grams of palladium, now you are going to cover 50 football field. Football here means soccer. So 50 football field, okay? So if we can control that, we may not be limited too much by the cost of the material because we are utilizing full potential of each element that we are adding. I'm going to skip us a little bit of details. The reason why people like me are thinking about this is because of this 2D graphene layered membrane. So basically, same sandwich analogy that I just mentioned. We have this graphene layer, and we have cobalt as a single atom. Cobalt is the best catalyst for activation of peroxymonosulfate, which is another precursor chemical. And so we load cobalt as a dot, okay, as a single atom, and we make a composite membrane. What happens is that it is an extremely tight, almost like a NF membrane, nanofiltration membrane. Water passes through. Most of the stuff get rejected, but pollutants such as 1,4-dioxane. 1,4-dioxane, by the way, is a prevalent pollutant in this region. It's very small, neutral, and hydrophilic, so it passes through most of the tight membranes that we have. So even if it passes through, because of the catalyst loaded on the surface of the membrane, it gets destroyed. That's the concept. And this is the demonstration of complete removal of 1,4-dioxane using this catalytic system. Inspired by that, I mean, just keep talking about oxidation side, but there are a lot of reduction research, reduction chemistry that we need. This is another example. Now we are using carbon nanotube as a matrix. We are loading copper as a single atom catalyst. Concept is the same. We have a scaffold, very tight scaffold, and we are going to load many, many catalysts, but we don't want to block the porous structure, so we load it as a single atom. And then that goes to reduce nitrate to, not to ammonia, because you want to treat, if you treat nitrate water and it smells like ammonia, we aren't going to be happy. You want to convert it to nitrogen gas. And this is one of the design. The next one is the most recent paper that we published. So bilayer electrified membrane with a thin single atom. So we have the first layer that converts nitrate to mostly nitrogen, but you sometimes get a little bit of ammonia. Then your second layer converts this ammonia to nitrogen gas. So I just showed you a few examples of single atom research, but if Lokesh gives me 1 more hour, I'll be happy to discuss more. But I'm going to go back to discussion about the catalyst stability. So a lot of research, at the beginning I was talking more about making reaction faster, but we got severe limitation because of the stability of the catalyst. And that is one of the biggest problem when we are thinking about catalytic water treatment in any realistic system. So we've been keep thinking about, okay, how can we make our catalyst more stable? So in the case of cobalt, we have done many different designs. If we load cobalt in any form onto a certain substrate, they leach out over time, no matter what we do. So what we did was we basically mixed like into sort of like composite material. This is a cobalt TiO2, a cobalt TiO3, and TiO2 mixed phase. Oops. Mixed phase such that they do not leach out. cobalt is sort of embedded inside this monolithic composite structure. When we are talking about this making cobalt material super stable, and we remember that, hey, people have been using cobalt from ancient time and they are still stable, right? So like China, like this, I'm sure you heard about this cobalt blue, which used to be really expensive material in older days. They are cobalt, they stay super strong. So we are talking about, we made this ceramic glazing concept. It's basically a cobalt aluminate. We do the same ancient technique of making glazing to cover the surface up, and then we make the membrane, and we also make this column. Column is actually interesting design because you can enhance the flow rate, and you can actually easier to upscale the system. And it is pretty good. It just lasts long. So this is the debate that we've been having. So imagine you as a university researcher, and you are developing a new catalyst for catalytic water treatment. Y-axis is your pollutant concentration, and x-axis is time. So the way you do an experiment is that you have a beaker, you grab the water, you add a catalyst, stopwatch, and measure the concentration, okay? And concentration goes down, and you measure the rate constant. And this becomes your performance measure. I'm sure anyone who did an experiment in the lab is familiar with this. And if you have another catalyst that shows this kinetics, you conclude that that's bad, red one is bad, the gray one is good. That's a good catalyst, okay? And you don't choose to publish bad catalyst. You want to choose to publish good catalyst. You submit a paper, and the reviewer too will typically ask you, hey, how long does it last? So what you do is do a few times of recycle experiment, okay? So now you do repetition. X-axis, which used to be tens of minutes, is now hundreds of minutes in some cases, and you plot the performance measure like this, okay? Your good catalyst is going bad, but it's not that bad. It's still better than your bad catalyst. So you still define, this is good catalyst, red is bad catalyst, okay? One thing that is interesting in catalytic water treatment is that if your catalyst is destroying pollutant in 1 hour scale, you are behind the race. So you want to destroy super fast. So your experimental scale is like a few minutes. What that means is that your repetition test, even if you do it 10 times, is only tens of minutes. Make sense? So your time scale is pretty short. Right, so, okay, that's what we do. We want to publish. We want to publish highest performing catalyst. But then, when you talk to people in the real world, they start to talk about, hey, how long does it really last? 2 hours. No. How many months, right? So there is a big gap. But the research that we do is really at the early phase of the research, early phase of the lifetime. So if anyone does this experiment long enough, let's say 3 months, 4 months, which one is the better catalyst? Red is the good catalyst. Bad catalyst in the lab is now a good catalyst. Good catalyst in the lab is a bad catalyst. No one is going to buy the bad catalyst. So solution is simple. Okay, I'm going to go back to my lab and I ask my PhD student to run the experiment for every 6 months period. Is it going to be possible? No one will do that experiment. I mean, do you want to do experiment? In fact, what is really interesting is that I'm not sure how many people are from wastewater field, aerobic sludge test. In the lab scale, they run for 6 months, 1 year, right? But in a catalytic scheme, for whatever the reason, we don't have that practice. So there is a big discrepancy. A lot of research that we do, our primary matrix is the performance activity, with a much less emphasis on the stability, but that's something that we need to address. So I'm concluding my presentation, so you may ask me, what do we do? So there are a few things to do, so I just put a paper there. So it just got published in Nature Sustainability, Best Practices for Catalytic Water Treatment. You can take a photo and you can read that paper, which is very short. So we have gone a lot of thoughts on how academic research should change in order to really develop something that are useful to real world, not just for the sake of publication. Okay, and in quick summary, we need to really spend more time understanding deactivation mechanism. We have to measure this material, how the material changes. At the same time, we have to design the material with application and the field deployment in mind. Okay, for the experiment, we are now moving heavily toward flow-through experiment. The batch experiment, short time scale, is useful to get initial understanding, but I think we should really move forward long-term flow-through experiment, which actually is getting more and more feasible these days. So with that, I'm going to finish my presentation by showing my proud research group, and I'll be happy to talk about World Cup at the panel.